And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, who is able to grant us more than we can ever imagine, keep our hearts and minds fixed and stayed on him and his purpose. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray, O Lord. Amen.
Amen. The Senate is in session.
Messages from His Excellency the President. Announcements by Your Honor.
Minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, 5th of August, 2026. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, the 5th of August, 2026 be deferred at this time.
The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, August 5th, 2026 be deferred. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. Those minutes are accordingly deferred. By way of further announcements, I have indications and excuses of absence from Senator Dr. Connell and Senator Redmond, and indications of late arrival from Senator Slocum, Ford, and Niles.
Presentation of petitions. Presentation of papers.
Senator, the Honourable Lisa Cummins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am commanded to lay the following document: the agreement for the establishment of a conditional credit line for investment projects, CCLIP BA 00011, mains replacement and non-revenue water reduction program in Barbados.
Reports from select committees. Questions to ministers. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries. Personal explanations. Motions related to the business or sitting of the Senate are moved by minister.
Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Standing Order 45-2 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
The question is, the Standing Order 45-2 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. Standing Order 45-2 suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Introduction of bills.
Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I'd like to give notice of the following bills: the Advanced Passenger Information and Passenger Name Record Bill 2026, the Domestic Terrorism Bill 2026, and also the Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honour Bill 2026. I beg also to give the first readings of the aforementioned bills.
The question is that the Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honour Bill, the Advanced Passenger Information and Passenger Name Record Bill 2026, and the Domestic Terrorism Bill 2026 be read a first time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The ayes have it. Those bills are accordingly read a first time. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move also to give notice of the following resolution: a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228, approve the compulsory acquisition by the state of the parcel of land property of the Ebenezer Methodist Church, situate at Ebenezer in the parish of St. Philip in this island, and more particularly described in the schedule hereto for the public purpose of housing development.
Public business is the order of the day.
Name of the Honourable Leader of the Senate to move the passage of a resolution to approve in accordance with the provisions of the Special Loans Act, Chapter 105, the borrowing by the government of Barbados of the sum of approximately Barbados $194.5 million by way of two export finance credits of approximately Barbados $54.2 million and Barbados $140.3 million Barbados dollars, respectively, from Banco Santander S.A. on the terms and conditions contained in an agreement, the main provisions of which are set out in the schedule for the acquisition of radars and offshore patrol vessels intended to bolster Barbados' national security purposes.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to move that the bill just read by the clerk be withdrawn at this time from the Senate order paper. And for clarity, the bill to be withdrawn the resolution to be withdrawn is a resolution to approve in accordance with the provisions of the Special Loans Act, Cap 105, the borrowing by the government of Barbados of the sum of approximately Barbados $194.5 million by way of two export finance credits of approximately Barbados $54.2 million and Barbados $140.3 million, respectively, from Banco Santander S.A. on the terms and conditions contained in an agreement, the main provisions of which are set out in the schedule for the acquisition of radars and offshore patrol vessels intended to bolster Barbados' national security purposes. This bill is proposed for withdrawal.
Resolution.
The question is that this resolution for borrowing of Barbados $194.5 million under the Special Loans Act, Cap 105, be withdrawn. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The next the ayes have it. The resolution is accordingly withdrawn.
Order number 2, sir. Order number 2 in the name of the Honourable Leader of the Senate to move the second reading of the Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honour Bill 2026.
Senator, the Honourable Lisa Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a relatively brief but significant resolution that I wish to pilot. In 2000, when the world entered this decade, this century, Barbados at that time introduced the Barbados Centennial Honour, the BCH. At that point in time, through the Barbados Centennial Honour, we introduced a number of measures where we honored 100 Barbadians whose exceptional contributions helped to shape Barbados. We did so again in 2016 when we introduced the Barbados Jubilee Honour to commemorate Barbados' 50th anniversary of independence. And now, as we approach the 60th anniversary of independence in just a few short months, this is a replication of those earlier incarnations. And so this bill, very briefly, is to continue our tradition of having commemorative activity and commemorative celebrations at significant points in our history. In summary, the objectives of this anniversary honor, very similar to previous ones, would be to commemorate, obviously, as I've said, the 60th anniversary of independence and the 5th anniversary of our republic, to recognize a number of distinguished Barbadians, and 60 is the number, 60 members of the uniformed forces, including all uniformed forces, Barbados Defense Force, Police Service, Fire Service, Customs Service, Immigration Department, Financial Intelligence Unit, and so on, anti-terrorism, anti-corruption, but equally to have 60 outstanding Barbadians recognized for their contributions to the country in a number of areas: public administration, education, healthcare, community development, youth development, excuse me, business and entrepreneurship, agriculture and food security, science, technology and innovation, culture, heritage, and the creative industries, sport, environmental stewardship, national security and emergency services, faith-based and charitable services, labor relations, international relations and diplomacy, and service to the Barbados diaspora. As a consequence of these areas where persons are going to be invited from the public to nominate individuals who are eligible to receive these awards, there's meant to be an extensive communications campaign to sensitize Barbadians both at home and abroad about the newest honor to celebrate our 60th anniversary. This is the bill before this honourable chamber, and I beg to move that this bill now be read a second time.
If there are no speakers, Senator Goodrich.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to everyone sitting here in the Senate, and good morning to everyone who is watching Parliament this morning. I rise to speak on this bill, this Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honor Bill. And it is with great pride that I can stand and say that I wholeheartedly support this bill, because to honor a man or a woman in this country is a great example, not only for this generation, but for all the other generations to come. And out of those 120 persons who will receive such an honor, I wish to congratulate them in advance for such. And one feature of this bill that I like is the fact that it encourages public engagement, because then members of the public will be able to nominate those individuals who they believe has exemplified great conduct and who are eligible in accordance with the bill under Section 5. So, Mr. President, I believe that when we think of persons such as the late Sir Garfield Sobers, who would have toiled and labored in this land and who's such a great example for us to follow, we can use them as an example of persons whose conduct has been so great to Barbados that persons will recognize such individuals internationally. When I think about the late Sir Garfield Sobers, I remember how there was a digital billboard in his name in New York City, and that is commendable. That means that he is a household name. And the individuals here who will receive this Barbados Diamond Anniversary honor, they will be a household name, Mr. President. And I believe that as we will be celebrating our 60th anniversary of independence here in this country, this is a fitting time for such. So I will not object to this bill at all this morning, because persons who toil and labor, they contribute to the success of this land. And I am a proud Barbadian, and I know that many Barbadians will be grateful to receive this achievement. So we are grateful for them, and I am grateful for this opportunity to say, sir, I am well pleased this morning. Thank you. This is my respectful submission.
Thank you very much, Senator Goodrich. The question is that this bill be read a second time. The those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that you do not leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do not leave the chair, and the Honourable the Senate resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
The Honourable, the Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 do now stand part.
Question is that Clause 2 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 do now stand part.
Question is that Clause 3 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, please say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 4 do now stand part.
Question is that Clause 4 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 5 do now stand part.
Question is that Clause 5 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 6 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 6 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 7.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 7 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 7 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Clause 8.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 8 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 8 do now stand part. All honourable senators in favour please say aye. Aye. All honourable senators against please say no. The ayes have it.
Clause 9.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 9 do now stand part.
The question is that Clause 9 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against, would you please say nay? The ayes have it.
Clause 10.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 10 stand part.
The question is that Clause 10 do now stand part. Will all honourable senators in favour please say yea? Aye. Aye. No. And those against, would you please say no? The ayes have it.
Report.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
Her Honour, the Deputy President has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read a third time. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye?
Aye.
Those against please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honour Act 2026.
The question is that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Barbados Diamond Anniversary Honour Act 2026. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Mr. President, this concludes public business for today, and we will proceed to deliver tributes on behalf of the late Right Excellent Sir Gary Sobers for the remainder of today's sitting.
Before you proceed, Senator Cummins, permit me to welcome to the Honourable Senate Daniel, son of Her Excellency Garfield, Genevieve, daughter of Her Excellency Garfield Sobers, Natisha, niece, and Anthony, great nephew. We're very happy to have you all here. Our deepest sympathy to you, and we certainly share in your grief at this time, but also in the celebration of an exemplary life which had such an impact, not just in our wonderful country, but the entire world. So welcome, and we appreciate your presence. Senator Cummins. Oh, sorry. Senator Archer.
Mr. President, I rise today to lead the tributes in this honorable chamber for the Right Excellent Sir Garfield Sobers, National Hero of Barbados. Sir Gary was the greatest all-round cricketer the world has ever seen. But if we leave his story at cricket, sir, we do not truly play justice to the man that is a national hero of our island. Sir Gary changed more than scorebooks, sir. Sir Gary changed the attitude of our nation. A boy that came from the Bay Island in Barbados that was still under colonial rule. He came from a working class home and lost his father at age 5. Black consciousness can sound like a big academic term, sir, but let me break it down today. It is knowing who you are and the history that stands behind you. It is understanding that your beginning does not decide your value, and that somebody else's opinion of you does not place a limit and is not in true a fact. For generations, sir, people that look like me and you were told to make yourself smaller. Don't stand too confident. Do not make anyone uncomfortable with your excellence and to know your place. So Gary knew his place all right. His place was wherever his talent, discipline, and character could take him. Whether it was in the road in the Bay Island, whether it was at Kensington Oval, or whether it was at Lord's Cricket Ground in London, sir, Sir Gary was on top of the record books. Here was a black Barbadian from a working class community mastering a game that had reflected the old boundaries of race, color, and class. He did it with Caribbean rhythm, confidence, and style, sir. Confidence says, I belong. Arrogance says, only I belong. Those two are not the same thing, sir. Sir Gary gave us one of the finest examples of this when Brian Lara was closing in on his world record of 365 in Antigua in the year of 1994. That record stood, sir, for 36 years. Some people told Lara, don't break that record. So Gary went into the dressing room, and told him, go out and break it, sir. Records are made to be broken. When Lara passed 365, Sir Gary walked onto the field and embraced him. Think about that picture, Mr. President. The elder was not threatened by the younger man. The Barbadian was not jealous of the Trinidadian. He understood that greatness grows when the next generation goes further, sir. That record moved, but Sir Gary's stature did not shrink. In fact, it grew. And sir, that is black consciousness too. It is continuity between generations. The elder makes room. The young person respects the foundation. Each carries the work further down the road. Sir Gary kept showing up. His involvement with the Sir Garfield Sobers International Schools Cricket Tournament was never a name on a banner. For decades, it created opportunities for young cricketers, here and abroad. He went to primary school finals, watched the next generation at Kensington Oval, offered advice, but most importantly, sir, a national hero, a man that was knighted. He always remained available to the cricketers and the young people of this nation. As Minister with responsibility for youth and culture, I am clear that sport is also part of our culture, especially cricket. Culture lives far beyond a stage or a festival. It is how our people create, it is how our people celebrate, solve problems, and carry themselves forward in the world. A talented child in 2026 should not have to depend on a 2x4 for a bat. Resourcefulness is admirable, sir, but deprivation is not a development story. Somebody saw Sir Gary. Inspector Wilfred Farmer offered him a place on the police team as a teenager. Sir Gary made his first class debut at age 16 and represented the West Indies at age 17. Talent started the story, sir, but opportunity allowed the story to travel. Sir Gary's story should never be used lazily to say he had little and he made it, so every young person should do the same. His example places responsibility on both sides, sir. Young people must practice, listen, accept guidance, recover from setbacks, and respect the opportunity. Adults, institutions, and governments must provide safe spaces, coaches, equipment, competitions, pathways, and second chances. Flair without discipline becomes a moment. Discipline turns flair into a legacy. His life tells every young Barbadian, you do not have to shrink to be accepted. Know your worth. Do the work. Stay open to guidance. But most importantly, carry others along with you. It also tells every adult, do not be afraid when the next generation approaches your record. Go onto the field and embrace them. To Sir Gary's family, his children, grandchildren, brother, and all who loved him personally, I offer my deepest condolences. Barbados shared him with the world, but we recognize that you have lost a father, a brother, and a loved one. The United Kingdom called him a knight. Barbados calls him a hero. History will call him one of the greatest ever. I want our young people to remember him as something else too, and that is proof. Proof that black consciousness and black confidence can stand beside humility. Proof that a small country can shape the world. Proof that culture can travel further than geography. Proof that records are meant to be broken, while legacies are meant to be continued, sir. Sir Gary has left the crease, but he has not left our culture, Mr. President. We may honor him by standing tall, working hard, making room, and carrying the next generation forward. May he rest in peace, sir. I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Archer. Senator Malibu.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that as you see me stand, you would know that I have very little that I can talk about cricket, because in fact, one of the biggest regrets of my life is that I can say that I never saw Sir Garfield Sobers play cricket live. Because when I went to Harrison College in 1976, Sir Gary had already retired in 74, and that was the first time I actually entered upon cricket. Because while some people were at St. Catherine's or Empire or Wanderers or wherever playing cricket on the weekend, as you would know, sir, I found myself at Turner's Hall or Bushy Park or Stewart's Hill, because it was a motorsport family that I grew up in. But sir, there are just a couple of things I wanted to say. I am very proud to say that my life crossed paths with Sir Gary on two occasions. The first one was when I came back to Barbados after school in the late 80s, early 90s, and I picked up the game of golf. And when there was the old Sandy Lane Golf Club, Sir Gary would play there often, and from time to time, I might get paired with him to play. Never on his team, but usually against him. He had his regular group he would play with, and people like Sir Paul Altman and Richie Allen were regularly seen playing with him and remained his friend, Aubrey Choi, etc. But on this one occasion, I would like to tell you, I was playing against him. And the game was tight, and we were, 14, 15 holes in. And I stood over a putt, and it was about a 15-foot putt. And sir, I thought I could definitely make this putt. And just as I was about to hit it, Sir Gary said, Andrew, $20, you can't make that putt. Well, no, I'm an amateur, you see. Of course, I took the bet, because I figured for sure this is a pretty simple 15-foot putt. But what I didn't realize is from the time I took that bet, everything changed. This little, if easy 15-foot putt now became longer and longer and more difficult. Well, making a long story short, sir, I missed the putt. I reached into my pocket, I pulled out my purple $20 bill, I handed it over to Sir Gary. But then I waited, and it wasn't too long, a few more holes, I saw Sir Gary had about a 25-foot putt, and it probably had about 2 breaks in it, and this one was going to be near impossible. So I decided it was my turn to get revenge. And just as he was about to putt, I said, Sir Gary, $20, you can't make that putt. And without a hesitation, he took my bet. Again, making a long story short, a few minutes later, I was $40 down. But I learned 2 lessons from that. Number one was that my 30-something-year-old self was no match for his 60-something-year-old professional athlete self. But more importantly, what I learned was that when he placed that friendly wager with me, everything changed for me. My skill diminished, my nerves went up, and what I could have done, I couldn't do anymore. On the other hand, when I placed the wager, the friendly wager with him, it enhanced him. He took on the challenge. And I imagine that when he was standing up there to bat, as you mentioned, Senator Archer, at Lord's at that time in the world, and it was probably being sledged by the other side, he stood up even taller, and that brought out the talent in him. And I saw that day, and I learned from that. The second time I crossed paths with Sir Gary was, I was in England, involved in motorsport, and I met the owner of a Formula One team, an Indian businessman. And when he learned that I was from Barbados, he was extremely interested about Barbados and so on. And eventually we started to talk about cricket. So I tried to keep up with him. But he was the owner of an IPL team as well. I didn't know that. I couldn't keep up with him. But eventually, what I really understood was he asked me, he said, "But do you know Sir Gary?" I said, "Well, I play golf with him." Well, with that now, I became his best friend because he saw perhaps this was a way for him to meet Sir Gary was through me. Anyhow, the conversation developed a bit further, and ultimately, making again another long story short, that gentleman came to Barbados to take on and buy the first CPL franchise in Barbados that they had, the Barbados Tridents. But he told me he would only do that if I could assure him that he would meet Sir Gary. So I called the one person that I knew that might be able to do it, which was Stephen Farmer, Wilfred Farmer's son. And he arranged it, and I told the gentleman, Sir Gary has said to me that if it will help Barbados cricket, if it will help West Indian cricket, he will be there. And Sir Gary came, sir, to a little restaurant in St. Lawrence Gap where the launch was. And my friend, the Indian billionaire, the owner of a Formula One team, the owner of an IPL team, the owner of many businesses around the world, I don't think that night he blinked once. He was in absolute awe. And what I learned that night, sir, is that when we talk about brand Barbados, and we talk about Barbados punching above its weight in the world, you cannot talk about that without talking about Sir Gary and how brand Barbados is interwoven with people like Sir Gary Sobers. I learned that night. I probably should have known it before, but it came home absolutely clear to me. Brand Barbados, and Barbados would not be anywhere where it is today without Sir Gary Sobers, Sir Garfield Sobers. So the last thing I would like to say, and I felt almost like Senator Archer had stolen some of my thunder here, but I want to honor the theme of opportunity, because the story that you told, Senator Archer, that is well documented, goes back apparently to when Sir Gary, Gary Sobers, a boy in Bayland, was noticed by Dennis Atkinson and Wilfred Fee Farmer, as they call it. And the story goes, and it's well documented, that Fee Farmer, who was an inspector in the Royal Barbados Police Force, had come to visit Wanderers, where Dennis Atkinson was. And Wanderers at that time was based in the Bayland. And apparently there was this boy on the outside of the field playing, and Fee Farmer noticed him and asked, "Who is that?" And someone gave him a name, and he said, "Bring him over." And he brought him over, and it developed. When he realized he was either 14 or 15 years old, he wanted him to play for the police team, because you see, Fee Farmer was the captain of the police team at the time. So he realized, he recognized some talent, and he wanted him to play, but he couldn't enter the police force. So he offered him to enter into the band. And I'm told he was a bugler. I have not heard anything about him being a bugler, so I assume he wasn't a very good bugler. But he was a good cricketer, and he made it from there. So what's interesting to me about that story, and why I wanted to mention it, sir, is that talent matters, as you say, and hard work matters, and character matters. But opportunity matters too. If you don't get the opportunity, that talent, that hard work, nothing will come of it. So what I'm asking today is, others have talked about the 365. Others can talk about the sixes in an over. Others can talk about how many thousands of runs he did. I know nothing of those statistics as I started from. That's not where I'm not a cricket guy. I appreciate it, but I can't comment on that. But what about the story I wanted to focus on is the opportunity and how opportunity matters. It's not easy to just think that you're going to aspire to be a Gary Sobers. Nature does not provide that many opportunities for. There will be very few other Gary Sobers with that talent. But you know what? We all in this room, and many who are hearing my voice, we can aspire to be Fee Farmer, to give someone an opportunity. And that is my challenge to us all today, is that we might aspire to be a bit more like Fee Farmer and Dennis Atkinson, and to recognize someone who is not on the field, who is outside the boundary, and who deserves a chance, and who wants a chance, and bring them in and give them a chance. Because they didn't know that day that he would become knighted, would score all these runs, would become a national hero of Barbados. But they gave it a chance. So I'm going to finish with these. The challenge I want to put out to everyone in making this tribute to Sir Garfield Sobers in the presence of his family and with those who can hear the voice are these words. When you have the opportunity to give somebody else an opportunity, take it. You must take your opportunity to give someone else an opportunity. And if you find yourself in a position where you can give someone an opportunity, take it, because we do not know where the next Sir Garfield Sobers will come from. With those words, sir, I pay that tribute, and may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Senator Goodrich.
Yes, thank you once again, Mr. President. This morning, I rise with pleasure to just give honor to the Right Excellent Sir Garfield Sobers. I must first say that he was born on the 28th of July in 1936. And it is a pleasure of mine because I too am a July born. And we share that in common. And Sir Garfield Sobers, he was a cricketer of the West Indies at age 17. And any young man, Mr. President, watching on and watching cricket in those times, they would have admired him. I must say that he brought so much joy, not just to his family, who we've extended condolences to, but he brought joy to Barbados, and he brought joy to many people around the world. He has sacrificed himself for country. He is one who put the country above self. And that is why Sir Garfield Sobers, the late Sir Garfield Sobers, is such a great example for any young person who is watching on to follow. Because many a time, people will have the idea that, sports may not take you far. They may be from our culture or from different mindsets in society. But when you think of Sir Garfield Sobers, you would recognize that he opened the doorway for many people in society, not just the youngsters, to believe in themselves and to believe that sports can take you out of Barbados to make a great name, not just for the country itself, but worldwide. And, Mr. President, I want to say that when I looked at his biography, and I see that he would have scored 8,032 runs at an average of 57.78. And at 21 years, he would have scored those 365 runs. He was the first player, Mr. President, to hit 6 sixes in an over. 6 sixes in an over. And that is something that we cannot forget. Because many people may pick up the ball, and many people can pick up the bat. But we can say he was the greatest cricketer that the world have ever seen. Because that is something that we've heard growing up in our houses, and it is something that is stuck in our memories. And his name shall live on. He has sowed the seeds, and I know that he has reaped the harvest. So it is with great pleasure that I can say he is one that will never be forgotten. And it is the memories that live on in our mind. It is the memories that will live on in our country. When you look and see how we can commend people such as the late Sir Garfield Sobers by creating a statue for him, I would say that too shall live on. When we can go to that statue and look and see the greatest cricketer that Barbados has ever seen, a greater cricketer for the world. And not only was he an individual who liked cricket, it is my understanding that he was great at golfing too. He was great at basketball. So the late Sir Garfield Sobers, he had many talents. So that shows you the love that he had for sports. It shows you the example that he would have led for us to live on and say, but not just cricket. That's not all that he did. He had great conduct. He had a keen interest in other sports. He was one that when you look at his record, you can see, but look, there are many that would take long to walk in his shoes. Yes, at one point of time, Brian Lara did break one of the records, but never mind that. We still remember every score, every wicket, every time that he took up the bat and he hit the ball to score those 6 sixes. We remember him. We admire Sir Garfield Sobers, and we will always remember the persons who have surrounded him in the country. We remember his lovely family who are sitting here today. And I must say, stay strong. Remember that in God we trust. And as long as we pass this time, our name has lived on when we have sowed greatly into such a great country as Barbados. So, to the family, my sincere heart goes out to you, and I thank you so much that your bloodline carries such a commendable and great man as Sir Garfield Sobers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Goodrich. Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by saying that today, we don't mourn. Today, we honor. We gather not only to remember, but to learn. And we gather not only to speak about Sir Garfield Sobers and the great things that he did, but today gives us an opportunity to learn from his life. Sir, humility, consistency, respect. These, I observe, are the pillars upon which his legacy rests. Sir Gary's humility was not an act. It was genuine. He stood before the world's greatest crowds, yet never placed himself above the smallest child. He wore honors and titles, yet never allowed them to weigh heavier than kindness. Humility, consistency, respect. He reminded us that greatness is not measured by applause, but by how one treats others. Day after day, year after year, Sir Gary showed us that excellence is not a moment, but it is a habit. He worked with discipline, with focus, with quiet determination. He proved that talent without effort is wasted, but effort with humility becomes greatness. Humility, consistency, respect. His work ethic was a sermon without words. He treated all people equally, from heads of state to strangers on the street. His courtesy never wavered. He saw humanity first, titles second. He taught us that respect is not selective, it is universal. This was his creed, lived daily. He loved the game of cricket. Sir Gary never kept knowledge to himself. He mentored, he guided, he encouraged. He reminded young athletes that talent must be matched with humility, discipline, and respect. His advice was not only about cricket, it was about life. He gave freely, and in giving, he multiplied greatness. He inspired not by speeches, but by example. His actions spoke louder than any words could. He showed us that leadership is not about commanding, it is about embodying. He showed us that leadership is more than just being the leader. Generations have been moved to dream bigger, to stand taller, to believe in themselves because of what he did, not merely what he said. His life was his message. And as we bid farewell, let us remember, yes, records will be broken, trophies will gather dust, statistics will fade into history, but kindness endures. It always does. Respect endures. Inspiration endures. Sir Garfield Sobers, National Hero of Barbados. On behalf of a loving nation, and I can say this on behalf of my father, because growing up in England, I had the privilege of watching my father and other Barbadians talk and walk in a completely different way whenever the West Indies cricket teams came to England. And I know firsthand what seeing Sir Garfield Sobers do on this cricket field meant for those people. And I don't think if you have not had the British experience, that many of us in this room will really understand what West Indies cricket meant then to those persons who moved to England in the 50s and 60s. And I want to take this opportunity to just pick up on one thing that was said by two individuals who really we should pay attention to. Brian Lara it was Brian, and it was Sir Clive also. They made the call for us to establish some sort of a cricketing academy somewhere where those young cricketers can have the experience of having that wealth of knowledge and proper training and all the other things that goes with making a good cricket team. And this is not just about winning. When I listened to them speak, I could tell that this was about representing the Caribbean in a manner that people will be proud. And I believe, sir, that these are the attributes that they saw in the captaincy of Sir Garfield Sobers in his time. And I want to echo their sentiments here and ask that we seriously look, especially here in Barbados, where we have created not only just the greatest cricketer the world has ever seen, but a long list of the greatest cricketers the world has ever seen. That we begin to also look at the lives of these individuals, how they treated others, how they respected the game, how they stood as beacons of what Barbados should be, what a Barbadian should be, what a West Indian should be when we step on a plane to go anywhere else in this world. And I say that only because in my own experience, I remember being in Mona and having lectures speak glowingly about Barbados, about their experiences coming to this island, about the way people treated them, about the way people carried themselves. They knew you were a Barbadian. All of this has been embodied in the life and work of Sir Garfield Sobers. And the best tribute that any of us could give to him and his legacy is to follow in his footsteps. And I want to take this opportunity once again, like I said, on behalf of my father, who would not be here, to thank you, the family, for giving him to us, for the time that he thrilled us with his cricket, the times he made us feel good about ourselves, sometimes when we didn't feel that well. But just by his example, many of us have grown up to believe that we can accomplish anything. And for that, I will be ever grateful. And with those few words, sir, I'm obliged. Thank you.
Senator Reid.
Thank you, Mr. President. First thing first, I want to extend condolences to the family and everyone who was closest to Gary in this difficult moment. I echo Senator King's sentiment that this is a celebration. And I'll borrow from my friends, Senator Malu, and just tell two stories of my personal interaction with Sir Gary. When I was about 13 or 14, and I'm old enough to remember the Windward Islands not having Test cricket grounds. I'm originally from St. Lucia, as you know, and my godfather at the time, who was the president of the St. Lucia Cricket Association, and we watched a Test match in Barbados. Must have been the second or third day, and Conde Riley was hosting us, and my godfather said to him, he just has one wish in life. He's never met Sir Gary. He says, "You never met Sir G? I'll meet Sir G this evening." He said, "How are we going to meet him?" So we'll go to his house. And so after the game, the day's play, we drive up to the house. And again, I must have been 13, 14. We piled in the car. I remember knocking on the door, and I never met the great man before. And so Conde opens the door, and he says, "Sir G," and he gives him a hug. And he has this, I can never forget, he has this embarrassing look on his face. And he says, "But Conde, you didn't tell me you were coming." He says, "No, Sir G, these are my friends." And he says, "But I was just sitting down to eat, and now," and he did this thing, I never forget it as a kid. There were some of the people at the table, have been one of his sons, and there were 3 people at the table, 3 plates of food. He took up the 3 plates of food, he went in the kitchen, he divided it into 8 plates, and he brought it back for everybody else. And I'd never, in that moment, I mean, I'm never going to forget as long as I live. As strangers come into your house, you are knighted by the Queen in Barbados. You don't know these people, but you are so moved by taking care of them and sharing with them that moment that you split your food that you didn't plan with them at that moment. And that was my very first encounter with him. I've met him other times during the course of my life, but that was the first. But the most, similar to your story, Senator Malalu, one of the most impactful moments of his legacy that I had in my life is I'm in Silicon Valley. It's the first time I go, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm at this conference, and incredible conference. So the president of Stanford is there, chairman of Google, the guy who invented the internet is like this incredible crowd, billions and billions of dollars of venture capitalists all around, and to the point that Senator Archer was making, I must have been one of 2 or 3 black people there, to be honest. The other one is actually the presenter of the conference, Nicholas Bradford, and he's a great man himself, and that's a story for another time. And 300-400 people in the crowd, and this one guy comes up to me, Indian gentleman, and he says, "Jonathan Reid, Barbados, you are from the land of the great Sir Gary Sobers. I need to understand what you're doing here." nice to meet you, from Barbados, special advisor to the Prime Minister. And it turns out this guy was the chief technology officer of Google. He was the one that built Google Maps. And he became obsessed with the idea of partnering with me to do projects in Barbados just for the opportunity to meet Mr. Gary. And he says, I would do this for free. I just want an opportunity to meet the great man. And as our fate would have it, we did organize that a group of investors and inventors from Silicon Valley did come to Barbados. He wasn't able to make it, the specific guy, Basad Ram, I'll say his name, because we're working on projects together right now. But we had an evening where all of these incredible inventors of technologies and investors were like kids in a candy store meeting Sir Gary, meeting some of the other legends. And again, to Senator Malatu's point, that idea of this legend around what we can create through cricket and what Barbados means as a symbol of excellence in endeavors that we feel so passionate about. In that moment, I really understood the power of it and what it represented. I am a huge fan of cricket, and I was obsessed with it when I was a kid. I was a captain of my school team. And one of the things that I used to obsess about was stats. I still love data, all right? I used to pore over statistics and really understand how do you have the mechanics of success and what makes excellence. And I always felt stats was a representation of prolonged excellence, right? You have to do this for a long time. So Gary Sobers, we talked about his career, talked a lot about the test runs, but it's always for me was the first class runs, right? He played first class cricket for 22, 24 years, nearly 400 matches, 20-something thousand runs, over 1,000 wickets. Sorry, over 400 wickets, over 1,000 catches. That means you're always working, right? He was always working. He was always part of the game. You never turned off, right? You're scoring runs, you go in the field, you're bowling, as well as you're catching in close fielding positions. That means you're always at work. And that for me was perhaps one of the critical parts of the ceremony. When we talked about the effort he made, that fact that people talk about his grace, people talk about his style, and clearly that was abundance, but it was effort. And there's a direct correlation between excellence, on the ability to sustain excellence, sustain effort, sustain hard work for long periods of time. And I think more than anything else, that's what he embodied for me. That this mission that we have as a young country to do something that outsizes our population, outsizes our land mass, outsizes the size of our economy. We want to do something that is extraordinary. We're not going to achieve that without a level of effort and extended pursuit of excellence that mirrors a career that spanned 20-something years. That's the nature of what we are at this critical moment of celebrating 60 years, and it deserves to be celebrated, of course. And the 5th year of the Republic deserves to be celebrated. But what about the next 60 years? How are we thinking about ourselves over a long duration of pursuing things that are truly extraordinary? Are we willing to do the hard work? We talk about the 6/6s. Do we talk about the injuries? Do we talk about the broken bones? Do we talk about the suffering, the process, the ability to go through pain, to be able to pursue something that's extraordinary? Do we want to do that as a country? Do we really want to get to that point? And if we truly want to celebrate him, if we truly want to see others emulate that level of global success, you have to be ready for that. You have to be in the pursuit. You have to be ready for the level of effort it requires to be truly exceptional. Roger Federer has this incredible speech he's done, commencement ceremony for university, and people talked about his grace and how effortless he looked, right? How easy he always made it look. And he said he didn't like when people described his style as easy, that it was the work, it was the effort that it took to win those games. And we're in a moment of time where our celebration of him should be down to how do we think about this path to put in the next level of work to get in our country where we needed to get to. And in this moment, where we are all channeling a level of focus around what do we want to see our country to be, we have a great example in him about what we can become. So with these few words, again, I want to spread my condolences to the family, send the condolences to all that love them, and really refocus on this next stage of Barbados development to encompass what he represented: excellence, effort, and vision and purpose. To you, I'm obliged.
Thank you very much, Senator Reid. Senator Slocum.
Sir, thank you for the leave. I would like to join my colleagues this afternoon to pay tribute to the Right Excellent Cigar Fuel St. Auburn Sobers. As a child, sir, we often believe in some quite interesting things. We believe sometimes, sir, after playing cricket late at night and you're making your way home, somehow the moon is following you. Sir, you think sometimes that you can run away from your shadow somehow with that ability. You believe, sir, that in the context of the sea, somehow deep in its waters, there are some kinds of sunken kingdoms or mermaids or special creatures living below the surface. And that was my experience. But, sir, I would say that it is equally interesting that for me, I spent a lot of time as a child watching television. And on the other side, I believed in superheroes. I believed that somehow Spider-Man could actually climb walls. Superman could fly. And that there were superheroes with some kind of magical ability to run faster than the speed of time. But sir, as I became older, I came to appreciate that those things weren't actually true. That I was just living a whimsical fantasy. And as time goes on, you come to appreciate that, those are just aspects of childhood. And its truest sense, things that you believe in. But as I grew older, I came to appreciate that they are superheroes, sir. Some with extraordinary abilities, with the ability to challenge what humankind would think that could never be possible. I first met Sagari, sir, just about 10 years old. It was a Saturday morning, at a very famous bar in the north, John Moore's Bar. And I was there with my grandfather, the former and late Prime Minister of Barbados, the Right Excellent Professor Owen Seymour Afro was also there. And I was totally mesmerized to see Cigar Fuel Sobers in person. And I was like, this is a superhero. For me, sir, I think that as time, evolves, when time changes, we have a duty as a country to ensure that young children can actually believe in something and believe that individuals like Cigar Fuel Sobers is the standard bearer of excellence or greatness in this country. It's something that they can believe in, something that they can believe one day they can be as great as something, or great as someone like Sagari. That experience of meeting Sagari as a 10-year-old, I remember it fondly. Here in front of me is someone that my teacher spoke about in school every Heroes Day or leading up to the Heroes Day period. You will learn of your national heroes. And for a majority of my childhood, we said we had only one living national hero, and that was Sagari. You would only dream to meet this man because in your eyes, a hero. I think, sir, that it's important to equally share that years later, I would stand weeks before his 80th birthday, or days rather before his 80th birthday. I was tasked to pay tribute at the big show to Sagari when the Calypso tent paid honor to him. And I shared with Sagari at that time, it was my dream one day to become a cricketer. Somehow I learned, or somewhere along the way, I learned that I didn't have the skill or the athletic build to be able to play cricket. But I came to appreciate that something that he said to me at that point. He said, well, young man, everybody can't be a cricketer. Everybody can't be an athlete. But I'm sure you're good at something. And from what I saw tonight, you have a voice. And that is the talent that you must use. And those words stuck with me for quite some time. Because as we stood on stage, he responded to the tribute. We had quite a great conversation afterwards, and see him interact with the Calypsonians and the entertainers there. You can see the level of respect that everyone paid to Sagari. Sir, but what happened later in my life was, over the last couple of years, I somewhat became involved in cricket. And working with Cricket West Indies, I had the opportunity to interact with Sagari more often. Certainly at cricket and the level of engagement about cricket. And I also realized that Sagari was the consummate diplomat. He had a way of saying things that, you know, the average Barbadian would, or the average individual would see it to be harsh, but he was quite smooth in the way he shared his opinions. And I often had some conversation with him about cricket and the direction of the sport, the regional sport. And I came to appreciate that even though he had retired many years, for him, cricket was more than just a game. It was the very pillar in which this region was able to stand when he, sir, was just 30 years of age. Sir, being this country formally went into independence in 1966, 4 months after he celebrated his 30th birthday. And as we observe International Youth Day today, sir, I think that it is a reminder to every young Barbadian that no matter the humble circumstances you may come from, no matter what the challenges life present you with, that you always have the opportunity to overcome those hurdles. At the time, Sagari retired in 1974. 1 year before the West Indies won the 1975 World Cup, and following that, they subsequently won the second World Cup in 1979. Sagari essentially paved the way for West Indies cricket to become the world dominant force. The first World Cup winners in 1975. Yes, he retired. Yes, he did not captain the team that played that first one-day international, one-day World Cup. But I think in all the accolades that we give him, the 6 sixes in one over, sir, in 1968, playing for Nottinghamshire, I think that we speak about the record that Brian Lara broke. But I don't think that we understand truly that the beginning of the successful period of West Indies cricket for this region was at the point of which Sir Gary led the team. And the charisma that we see with Viv Richards walking out the field with that level of swag when they color up, you know, when we look at the way in which Sir Clive Lloyd led the team and his style of leadership, a lot of these cricketers of that era would have fashioned some part of Sir Gary and made it their own. Sir, as I close, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage Barbadians across the length and breadth of this country to recognize the opportunity that you have. Sir, the Barbados Film and Television Association, which I have the pleasure to lead, over a year ago we began discussions with the family, Daniel in specific, his son, about exploring the way in true film we could take to the wider world that legacy. Because while we recognize that this is the world's greatest cricketer, and that the story of, in sport, football in specific, Pelé, you will see documentaries and films about him. In boxing, their greatest, Muhammad Ali, we see them immortalized in film, the visual element. I think that we as a people have a great opportunity to do similar for Sir Gary. And I'm pleased that through preliminary discussions with Senator Archer in his ministerial capacity, we've been able to make some headways with that effort, as well as with Minister in the other place, the Minister responsible for heritage, that we've also had some preliminary conversations and such. And I hope that this is something that we can achieve, but I also like to encourage Barbadians to find their own ways in which they can immortalize the legacy of Sir Garfield Sobers. And sir, with those words, I would like to once again extend my heartfelt condolences to the family of Sir Gary, and just want to thank them for sharing him, not just with Barbadians, but with the world. To his family, we owe a sincere and a deep depths of gratitude for sharing him with us and the world. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Slocum. Her Honor, Senator Thompson.
A small community, a tiny island, a field open for the contest of equals or unequals, readied for a giant to make an outsized and outstanding contribution that will be remembered long past his lifetime, that will call his name to be revered for all times, that will cause the reputation of his island to be burnished and to be associated with greatness. See the contest. In early post-colonial days, an ordinary Barbadian, I apologize, sorry, the technology as usual defeats me. Sir, yes. I think that I have stopped it, sir. This new computer, sir, whenever it just picks the phone up, the audio, so it rings. I apologize. Yes, timing was very bad. here was what we would call an ordinary Barbadian, about not only to define himself, but to redefine cricket and to establish a mark on post-colonial Barbados that said to other ordinary Barbadians born in simple communities where working class people lived, in communities where people were not expected to achieve or to aspire to excellence, in communities where people were not necessarily expected to reach the top, not expected to dominate, and not expected to be world class. Because if you got out of a working class community and working class Barbados at that time, in post-colonial Barbados, it was good enough for you maybe to get a clerk's job in town or certain types of opportunities, but nobody expected you to stand on the world stage and announce your presence and your country's exceptionalism to the world. And that is really what Garfield St. Alban Sobers did, not just for a generation, but for a nation. That in a time when we had come out, or in some instances were just about to come out of a colonial era, he said to the country and to the world that we would not be diminished by our history. We would not be dependent on others. We would not be reduced by the way people defined us, but that we would take the game taught to us by those who were our masters, master it, and show indeed that we could be, as one poet said, better than our clay and equal to the peaks of our desire. And what was the desire of a small nation? What was the desire of a region? To come to know itself, to feel that we could experience, and this is part of the reason why when we became independent, there was some confidence that it was not beyond us. Because somebody like Sagari had shown that irrespective of the frame from which we had come, irrespective of how others sought to define us, irrespective of what our historical differences had been, that we were capable of excellence when given the opportunity. That we were capable, if we believed in ourselves, of reaching far more than what others said we were entitled to and the limitations they sought to put on us. It was therefore a showcase in capacity, a showcase in intellect, a showcase in skill, and a showcase in the best of humanity that Sagari put on, not just for the country, but for the world. And so the Errol Barrow question, the right excellent Errol Barrow's question, what mirror image do you have of yourself? When you look at this icon, you begin to understand not just the mirror image that he had of himself, but the mirror image which he allowed a nation at a time when people felt that the independence experiment could not work, that it was a kind of joke thing, that this tiny little island with so little resources, like this ordinary man from an ordinary community, without perhaps the training and the skills that others had, without the opportunity and the platform that others would have started with, the parallel between man and country, between capability, potential, and achievement is absolutely amazing. And that is why his name, even for those like me who never saw him play in person, but who were in awe when you got to shake his hand, when you were overwhelmed, not just by who he was on the field, but who he was off the urbane nature of the man, his charm, his presence, his humanity, his humility, all of that defined him. But it said something about who Barbadians were. And it said something great about who Barbadians could be and what this region could achieve when it uses its God-given talents, applies itself with discipline toward a goal or objective. Because it wasn't only that a small island and ordinary people were capable, it was that they could become the personification of excellence and the best that the world had seen and had to offer. It was an important lesson in self-definition as a people and clear instruction in self-definition at the national level. He came to help us understand, to cause us to appreciate not just who we were, but who we could be and what we were in fact capable of. The lessons that he taught us were not just important historical lessons that caused him to be labeled and respected and celebrated as a national hero. For a long time, we may start to ask ourselves as a nation, how do you truly honor a national hero? How do you celebrate the legacy of a national hero? And while there are facilities named after him, while there are statues in his honor, it is my view that what we really need to do is not just delve into the data and the statistics, though the story that they tell is one that puts us in awe, but to ask ourselves, who was this man? What were his defining features and attributes and characteristics as a man, as a person, and as an athlete? And I say that because having shaped the colonial and the post-colonial period, the question to us as a nation, because you are talking about a national hero, is not what the statistics and data are, but how the characteristics that made him the quintessential Barbadian can be so manifested in us today and in the next generation of Barbadians, that he will come to help define the Republican experiment, excellence in the Republic, who and what we stand for, and how Barbadians of this and the next generation can use various spheres of endeavor to stand astride the global stage and hold the flag of Barbados aloft, not merely in their hand, but through the skill and the characteristics that they manifest, and do it in such a way that the world turns in awe, in respect, and in acclaim of the individual and of the country. Because Sagari had not just a love for the game and a sense of the moment when he got to the crease, but he understood his responsibility to the nation and the region. And it is an important lesson today where so many of us want to pursue our rights but fail to act on our responsibilities. And that is why Sagari stands tall and will continue to do so. He acted with the responsibility to the reputation of the nation and a region that he had come to symbolize as a dominant figure, challenging a colonial history, defying a past that had been forced on us, and declaring that we are capable of the best, of excellence, and of creating examples that others for years would try to follow. How do we embrace and emulate this example? How do we hone the skills or the defining characteristics which were his in such a way that we then ourselves can offer to country and to region lessons that endure, examples that will be followed, and legacies that will be celebrated? What is a Barbadian and what represents the best of Barbados? And what made Sagari so typically both of those? A Bajan, but the best of Bajans, the best of Barbados. The collar up, the characteristic walk, became the way that a lot of young men then chose to wear their collars and walk. He established new style, but he did it by being his authentic self, not by emulating anybody else, but showing that he could innovate, by showing that he could dominate, by showing that he could be different, but still master that which was before him. Our country owes a debt of gratitude to this national hero. But it is not a gratitude that will easily end, because the example is one that if we take it apart to look at what made the man, not how he played the game, but what made the man, because it was the man that made the difference. And it was the characteristics and skills and personal attributes that the man brought that defined the moment and created the history and built the legacy. And we owe it as a nation to learn those lessons, to understand what made him distinctive. What was it that as a Barbadian he honed to become who he was, and indeed what he was, and how those lessons can be emulated by us today so that we can continue to shine at the national and global levels, and so that all will pay tribute to man or woman and country. A family grieves and we grieve with you. A country mourns, and rightly so. We honor a legacy, but we embrace the lessons of excellence and the perfection of example and discipline that caused him to become a national hero. And we salute a life heroic and well-lived with gratitude. I'm much obliged.
Thank you very much, Senator Johnson. Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise to wrap up this phase of the tributes, and I want to express appreciation to all of the honourable senators who have spoken today. We heard first from a minister with responsibility for youth on Youth Day, and I deliberately asked for Senator Archer to anchor the discussion today and to lead off with the speeches. One, because of the day that it is, but two, because as we planned the state funeral and put the arrangements in place, one of the things that we thought was important for us as a nation was to ensure that Sagari Sobers at 89 years old would set a pathway that others would follow. And it is on that basis that you've heard the Prime Minister in the other place speaking about the journal for 365 days, mapping the number of runs that are iconic for him. But when we conceptualized that, the concept brief was captioned, inspired to aspire. And it was because we wanted to have our young people following in his pathways. And so it is on that basis that the Minister with responsibility for youth now, and at the time of the state funeral, he was then Minister with responsibility acting for sport. I'd asked for him to anchor today's discussion. Former Minister of Sport, Senator John King, followed, and it was important for him, not just as former Minister of Sport, but also former Minister with responsibility for heritage and a former Special Envoy for Heritage, to anchor that. The representative from one of the opposition member parties, Senator Karina Goodrich, I want to thank her for her contribution and her exaltation of Sagari, and so too for the very personal speech delivered by Senator Malalu. Obviously, having presented that in a way that captured both cricket and golf, that was an important part of the conversation, because what many people may not know was that as we were planning the state funeral, we worked together not just with the Barbados Cricket Association to have the Guard of Honor for cricket, but we also attempted to integrate the golfers, because golf was such a huge part of who Sir Gary was, and we wanted to make sure that that had been integrated. We were unable ultimately on the day before to include the golfers and the golf bats, just because the aesthetics of it didn't quite work with the two together, but also because we knew we were bringing home the West Indies cricketers overnight, and we needed to be able to create a space for them. But golf was as much a part of his life as cricket was, and so I want to thank Senator Malalu. Senator Jamal Slocum, in his comments, also spoke obviously about the history of cricket, and he is no stranger to the work being done by Cricket West Indies, and so I expect that he would have brought that perspective to bear into his contribution, and I want to thank him for that. And then ultimately, Senator Reid, of course, connecting those who serve now in different spaces with the legacy of Sagari and then what that has meant for Barbados, and then bringing it home. We had Madam Deputy President, Senator Elizabeth Thompson. I want, as I close, to begin by again pointing out that Sagari was a family man. He was a father to Matthew, to Daniel, to Genevieve. He was a grandfather to many. He was an uncle and a great uncle to others, a brother, a sibling. He was all kinds of things to all kinds of people, and you shared him with a nation. And I think that, or at least I hope that you can see by the outpouring of tributes around the globe, and by the outpouring of tributes right here at home, and in the funeral itself, and those who spoke, that you shared him with a grateful global nation. You shared him with a grateful Barbados. You shared him with a grateful cricketing international community, and you shared him with all the cricketing greats and cricketing nations of the world. And on behalf of all of those persons who have poured tribute upon Sagari, and you have sat graciously in the moments of your grief and heard and absorbed all of that, I also want to say thank you to you. Thank you for being here today. We do have a resolution that I want to read into the record at this time, and I will do so now. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas the Right Excellent Sir Garfield St. Alban Sobers Knight Bachelor, National Hero of Barbados, Officer of the Order of Australia, and member of the Order of the Caribbean Community, passed this life on the 17th day of July 2026 11 days shy of his 90th birthday. I know, Daniel. And whereas this distinguished son of the soil, born in the city of Bridgetown on the 28th day of July 1936, the fifth of six children to Shamont and Thelma Sobers, rose from the humblest of origins to become, by universal acclaim, the greatest all-round cricketer the world has ever known. And whereas he first represented the West Indies in March 1954 at the age of 17 years, and in a test career spanning 20 years amassed 8,032 runs at an average of 57.78 and took 235 wickets in 93 test matches, and in first-class cricket scored in excess of 28,000 runs and captured more than 1,000 wickets. And whereas at Kingston, Jamaica in 1958, at the age of 21 years, a little older than you and Tony, he made 365 not out against Pakistan, and then the highest individual score in the history of Test cricket, a record which stood for 36 years before it was surpassed by another son of the Caribbean. And you heard that earlier from other speakers who mentioned Brian Lara. And whereas at Swansea in Wales, on the 31st day of August, 1968, playing for Nottinghamshire against Glamorgan, he struck 6 sixes in a single over, a feat of audacity and mastery which endures among the most celebrated annals of the game. And whereas he captained the West Indies from 1965 to 1972 and was chosen to lead the rest of the world 9 in 1970, and by his conduct both on and off the field of cricket, both on and off the field of play, carried the name of Barbados and the Caribbean with honor into everything cricketing of the world. And whereas at the Melbourne Cricket Club cricket ground in January 1972, leading the rest of the world in Australia, he scored 254 runs in an innings, which Sir Donald Bradman described as the best innings he had ever seen. And whereas he was created a Knight Bachelor by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at the Garrison Savannah, iconic photographs which we have all seen, in February 1975, and was named a National Hero in Barbados in 1998, and accorded the style and title of the Right Excellent. And whereas he was adjudged the Cricketer of the Century by Wisden Cricketers Almanac in the year 2000, and was inducted into the ICC Cricket Hall of Fame in 2009. And whereas his name is borne in perpetuity by the Sir Garfield Sobers Trophy, awarded annually since 2004 to the ICC Men's Cricketer of the Year, and by the Sir Garfield Sobers Sports Complex in this island. And whereas in the years when this country moved from colony to independent nation, his genius gave to young people the priceless gift of belief. Standing as living proof of the highest order can come from these shores. And whereas for all the magnitude of his achievement, he remained a man of singular humility, courtesy, generosity, who greeted the head of state and the taxi driver, the celebrated and the child seeking an autograph with the same smile, the same respect, and who gave freely of his time for the encouragement of young sportsmen and sportswomen. Be it resolved that this Honourable Senate pay the accolade of its highest tribute to the late, the Right Excellent Sir Garfield St. Auburn Sobers, National Hero of Barbados, as an exemplar of excellence, dignity, humility, and grace, and record its profound gratitude for a life which brought unmeasured honor and joy to this nation and to the people of the Caribbean. And be it further resolved that this Honourable Senate share the sorrow felt by a grateful nation and extend its deepest sympathies to his children Matthew, Daniel, and Genevieve, to his brother Cecil, to his other relatives and friends, and wish and express its wish that they be comforted by the memory of a life lived selflessly and in service to his nation and to his people. Dated this day, Wednesday, the 12th of August, 2026. At this time, Mr. President, I beg to move that this resolution do not pass.
Before I put the question, allow me to associate myself with the remarks made by all honourable senators and to say very briefly that I had the honour, along with Her Honour Senator Most Honourable Elizabeth Thompson, of being in the Cabinet in 1998 when we moved to introduce national heroes. There was great debate, great research, the question of what would be the criteria for national heroes. Many were of the view that the only national heroes should be those who are long dead, because they can no longer do anything to undo what they've done before, or that those who are maybe 50 years, 100 years removed can dispassionately look at their contribution, etc., etc. There was, however, one solid point that everyone could gather around, that cigar field sobers, very much alive, very much well, had, like the other 9 that we identified, not only be outstanding in their own right, but what was important to qualify as a national hero was that your actions were such as to influence the course of the nation, as in the case of Bussons, Randy Adams, etc., etc. And this resolution, indeed, as it ends, in the case we live a life selflessly and in the service of its nation and its people. And indeed, I believe there's a piece written called A Nation Imagined, and it is quite clear that as colonies and pre-independent nations and people across the colonial world already, we're debating, are we ready to go independent or not? That the excellence of the Red Excellent Cigar Field Sobers and the West Indies team at that time inspired the confidence. So in many ways, there was a revolution. And as the great writer said in his great C.L.R. James in his book, Beyond the Boundary, they do not know cricket who only cricket know. And cricket really being given the hierarchy, given its place in the hierarchy of sport and in the British and the colonial world, they found that the West Indies could excel at cricket, beat our colonizers at their own game, meant that indeed we were ready to be our own masters. And therefore, we at that time, Senator Thompson, had no hesitation to identify among the 10 national heroes, one living national hero, the Right Excellent Cigar Field Sobers. I therefore want to join with the honourable senators who spoke to offer my sympathy to the family, and I thank you for taking the time out from all that you have to do to be here with us, to give us the opportunity to enshrine forever in the records of this island by way of our official records called Hansard, the gratitude of the nation, and many generations hence will be able to look on at the records of the House of Assembly, the records of the Senate, note the contents of the resolution, and also the specific speeches made, and that will also add to the store of knowledge which we will leave behind for future generations to muse on and to build on and draw on the work of those of us who were privileged to see Cigar Field Sobers play his craft. They will not see it, but they will know from the depths of the emotions captured in the records of our Parliament the great contribution which the Right Excellent Cigar Fields and Orville Sobers has made to this nation and to the civilization of the world. The question is that this resolution do not pass. Will those honourable senators in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This resolution is therefore passed.
Mr. President, this is such a strange occurrence for me that I almost wasn't sure what was happening. But this brings us to the end of government's business for today. And so I want to thank all the honourable members who are here, those who have come. I want to thank the members of the family who joined us for today. And I beg to move that this sitting of the Senate be adjourned sine die.
The question is that the Honourable the Senate be now adjourned sine die. Will those honourable senators in favour please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The things the ayes have it. This sitting of the Senate is adjourned sine die.